Positions and requests. Thank you. One for the
Well, I guess you can tell what I came to speak about. My name is Lisa McCotter. I live in Titusville. I'll begin with the end in mind. I need help. I need your help specifically, and I need your help generally. So specifically, you'll see back in March, I was here about the CUP for the event center, which you all graciously passed. And then we proceeded on the journey, which was the next step, getting the architect in, doing the drawing, and filing, getting a contractor, filing for permits. And that's where we ran into the problem. The problem is that we're trying to use an existing space without much change. And when we went to get our permit, the occupancy was bumped up to over 550. We, as you can see on the permit, we were thinking right around 300. At 300 occupancy, we can use the space just as it is with the bathrooms. When you bump the occupancy up, the bathrooms go up to 8. Then the project becomes, it's not cost effective. And beyond that, it's not what we wanted to use the space for. We don't want that occupancy. And so if you, and I'll just tell you here, we had many meetings with the city. And Mayor Johnson was in the most recent one. And we were given the suggestion of asking for the bathrooms that are there to be, I don't want to say permitted, but through the Board of Adjustment and Appeals, to be acceptable and to allow us to, and at 300, that's fine. So that's what we've done. We've already filed for that, and I believe we'll be on the agenda at the end of the month. Then if you, and this is the problem that we're having. If you go ahead and flip past the CUP, you can see the drawing of the layout of the room. That's existing. We didn't add any of that. We didn't take anything away. We're trying to use it as it is. So you can see the existing bathrooms, and notice the small, well, the rooms that are smaller than the main room. Notice what that leaves. It leaves a horseshoe-shaped room with 2 very small rooms. That's actually a little third one that would be only for like an office, like an on-site manager. Then if you go to the next, that's a table layout of 200 tables and chairs. These are actual tables and chairs that have been purchased, seating 10. Look at the room. 500 people, that's 200 and it's full. Then if you go to the next, that's an actual picture of the property. Notice bottom right, that's the view from the other rooms. That square footage was included in order to come up with that capacity.
You need additional time?
I do, please.
How many minutes?
10? I'll settle for 3.
You're pushing it.
I know.
I do want to also talk as well, so.
You have to get separate 3.
3 minutes?
3, if please.
Do I have a motion?
Motion for 3 minutes.
Second.
Thank
Motion and
you.
a second.
So if you'll notice that
One
little,
second,
oh,
please.
sure.
I have a motion and a second.
Oh,
All
sorry.
those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Now you can.
Thank you. So that opening in the small room, you can see that you're not going to put guests in there if you're having a wedding, a reception, any kind of function. That could be used in addition, say, I don't know, the bride to get dressed there, a silent auction room, a buffet room, but you're not going to put additional tables and chairs in there because honestly, it would be rude. It's just, no one's going to do it. So then if you flip over to the next page, you'll notice this is actually the from the building code, you'll notice the part in yellow. The part in yellow that I've underlined says that the building department has discretion, and it was within the realm of possibility that they did not have to stick with the table of, the square footage. There could be discretion there. And although we've asked for the discretion to be used to lower the number of occupancy, it was not. And that is the specific request, but the overall request is, the general request of where I need your help is, Searstown Mall is now Titusville Mall, and it's important to me. I might get a little teary-eyed, but this is not a job for me. It is a job, and I love it, but beyond that, this Searstown Mall, it's a part of our history too, every bit as much as downtown Titusville. It was built in '66. In February of '66 was the first unmanned test launch of Apollo. And by the end in October, Searstown Mall was open. If you will look at the lines of the mall itself, it's mid-century. If you come inside and look at the details, those mid-century details are still there. And we have someone who has come in to our community from California willing to invest in our community and honestly help us save a landmark. And what is hurtful to me as a citizen is that there are so many roadblocks, and I just wonder why the city can't come along and say yes if it's at all possible. Say why not instead of no. And that's really, we're going to need your help along the way. As you know, if it wasn't for this man, we would have another blighted area of vacancy of 95,000 square feet with Sears. We need your help.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm a little confused on this because I was at that last meeting and you had your contractors there, and I thought we had all of this settled out. And apparently something changed, which I'm not sure what it was, other than you don't like the number of...
The only thing that was settled out is that we were given the advice of why not go to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals and request that we be allowed to use the bathrooms that are currently on site. And
You agreed to that at the time, is what I'm saying. I mean, that's what you said okay to. You said, okay, everything's done, fine, and left. So this is a little bit different for me because I thought we had this all taken care of. But Mr. Wright would like to talk, I think.
Well,
so.
in answer to your question, that is what we are trying to do, and that's what we have been denied being able to do. And so we did take that advice, and we have filed, and we will be going towards the end of the month. We were on the agenda this month for that board.
So you were allowed to apply for that?
Yes, we got a denial. First, you have to get the denial from the city.
Oh.
And then, so the building
But it
department.
was part of the process that you were going through?
It's part of the process. May I also say that it's added another $700 on top of the CUP, which is like $1,800. This has not caused, I mean, this is a
Some
problem.
of these things, as I recall, and I'm not saying I'm expert at it, but as I recall, there's state laws involved too, and we don't have anything to do with that except to enforce them.
State laws, what do you mean? What are you referring
A
to?
certain amount of the spacing and so forth. I don't remember all the details, but I remember some of it had to do with state law.
Well, if you'll look at that page where I did the little yellow, it's directly from the ordinance, where it does say that there can be leniency, there can be, there's leeway for the building department.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to speak now, sir? Oh, wait 1 second. We have one question.
Thank you. And this is for staff, if you can help me out with this. So what I see is, and just, so it's movable tables and chairs, which from the ordinance that is provided to me, or the code that's provided to me, seems like the one that was highlighted, which talks about areas without fixed seating. I'm presuming that that would be applicable to what we're talking about. Below that, she had highlighted an exception can be made for the calculation. So the calculation is defined by the code, which is city code or
The
state
Florida
code.
Building Code,
So of which we are obliged to abide by.
that's correct.
Do we have any additional restrictions to that code that waive that exception?
The building official is licensed, and he is the only person who can interpret that code.
Okay.
And he has done that.
Okay.
There are some, there's a fire code, which
Right.
we also adopt.
Right.
And he coordinates with the fire department. But in this case, it's my understanding that it is the building code that is the issue, and that's why the appeal has been made to the building code, to the building official's interpretation.
If let's say that the exception had been granted, and this is for recourse. So as an example, we say, great, it's for 300 or 200, whatever the number was that they state that they will maintain. We walk in Tuesday and all of a sudden there's 500 people. Is there recourse for that as a city?
You would have to ask the attorney.
So as an example, in good faith, we step forward, in good faith, they step forward, let's pretend that they don't keep that good faith, and all of a sudden it's, everybody is, way over. Do we have recourse to address that through anything? Civil fine, follow-up?
Well, first of all, the building official is going to make his interpretation of what's appropriate. If within his discretion, he feels like there are guidelines or factors to put into place that would allow a lesser number of facilities or restrooms by limiting the occupant load with things that he feels are appropriate, within his discretion under the building code as a building official, and then we find out that that is not being adhered to, then yes, and I would go to the building official and we'd find out, is it pulling the BTR? I would have to look and see what remedies are available depending on what discretion he's exercising and what the building code allows. It could be a number of things. From shutting them down, we'd also have to look at fire and see if that's implicated. But again, as staff told you, this begins and ends with the building official's interpretation of this code as applied to that building. And BAA is the one who, if they're appealing his decision, is appropriate to handle that.
Well, and just where I'm looking at is, number one, subject to the building code's interpretation, it is what it is. I mean, that it is what it is. But the balance that I'm looking at, to be fair, is if we have, just from an investment to the community, that is a substantial investment, if the rationale for the denial of the exception is based on prevention of hazard to the public at large, I get that that is a valid concern, but I also get that if you're going to pump a lot of money into an economic development project, that you would probably be adverse to that risk, right? So I'm not going to have my space shut down because of we are violating whatever. It just, to me, from a business, it doesn't make sense to say, well, we can squeeze 50 more in. And so I think that there's an equal amount of liability that everybody's going, we don't want to do that. So that would be my interpretation from why we would apply such an exception, but to be handled at someplace else, I get.
It would be a code enforcement issue, to answer your question. If it's a health safety issue, the city could decide if they want to get an injunction to prohibit that behavior from continuing. So it all depends on what's in place and what the violations are.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you. That's helpful, thank you.
I have another light, member Diesel.
So we, the city, are the ones with the building official,
Yes, sir.
and you've not been able to talk to the building official?
Oh, many times.
Okay, so the building official and you have spoken, and the building official has not made the exception?
No, he won't budge. He wouldn't even at their first meeting when he was first or second, wouldn't even look at the table arrangement, which we feel like the table arrangement shows that 550 people is not appropriate. It's not an appropriate capacity for this space because of, well, you can see the way it's divided, the
Right,
shape
I
of
would
it.
agree with you by the pictures. So really, if you're trying, what's the number you're saying?
We don't want to go over 300.
Okay, so you're looking at 300.
good at 300.
And they're feeling that the building, or the room, the place is big enough for 500.
550 plus.
It would seem to me that you're certainly going to be, safer by having smaller numbers.
Right.
And to Member Behringer, something I had discussed with city manager, if they go over the 300, then they can deal with that issue that they violated that number. Obviously, we're looking at another issue that I'm like, this just looks like a little paralysis with analysis, and it just seems like, I know we got state law, I get that, I do. But dadgum, can't move that queen. So, that being said, I'm sure that you're going to take the next step. Now, would the building official be part of that program when they go to the next step?
Yes, in fact, he's the one who suggested this avenue as an opportunity for them to resolve this issue.
When they go to the next step, will he make that decision, or will it be?
No, it will be the Board of Adjustment and Appeals that will make the decision.
Okay, well, clearly, I wish that there was something we could do here tonight and say, boom, let's do this, but we don't have that magic.
Thank you. Sir?
Good evening. Just to give you a little background.
Name and address, sir, please.
Jesse Wright, 3550 South Washington Avenue.
Thank you. That's for the records.
Thank you. When the property was purchased back in February of this year, as you know, the malls anywhere in U.S. need to be repositioned. You can't just continue with what you had 20, 30, 40 years ago. So as part of the repositioning of the mall, we need to look at other avenues to be able to bring traffic into the city and also into the mall. So the property is around 290,000 square feet. 90,000 square feet of that amount is allocated to Sears. As you know, Sears has already left. And I had to actually pay them to leave. Otherwise, they would have stayed here and they would have left, probably another a year and a half from now. So with 90,000 square feet of vacancy, I thought when we passed the CUP that we would have the event center already completed and done so we can move on into the next step. Now, I'd like to withdraw our request for 300 people, and I'd like to downsize it to about 200 people. Any restaurant with a couple of chefs, if you cannot get enough people to be able to cook for that many people, they can't obviously cater to that many people. So if we were to reduce the number of people to 200, so we can use the existing facilities, I would assume, as you mentioned before, is let's have a recourse. I would be more than happy to give the city attorney an indemnification letter that if we go at 201 or 202, and if the fire department comes in and shut us down, I'll be happy with that. We cannot get, first of all, our process, we've done this in other states as well. We have a process just before we have any kind of events there. They have to fill out an application, we have to run the credit, we have to sign a contract. We need to know exactly how many people are getting into 10,000 square feet. So for that reason, we're not just coming up with these numbers and saying, look, we can jam in extra 50, 100 people. We get paid based on leasing up the space. And that's it. So if they squeeze an extra 50 people, we'll make sure that we have security to make sure that they're just not going to go over that. And as Lisa mentioned, it comes to a point where we cannot really put more funds into this because it's not just a 10,000 square feet. I've got 90,000 square feet more to deal with. That has to be split in multiple spaces. And it requires HVAC. If I could get extra 3 minutes?
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Go ahead, sir.
I appreciate that. If not, I thought that Sears is going to stay till September of 2019. I did not expect that they would leave this early, and I did not expect to pay them to leave. So with that said, we're now from 290,000 square feet, we have nearly about 190,000 square feet left, 10,000 plus extra 90,000. Well, we have other vacancies within the mall as well. So I was thinking that the request would be dropped down to about 200 people. And for the record, and I didn't want to bring this up, I have no choice to bring this up. We had a meeting with Mr. Steve Adam on site, and my architect can attest to that. I thought at the time, when he approved it verbally, that we're going to go ahead and go forward. I, have to say that I did not know that he had a boss named Gary, so on and so forth. If we knew that, we would have just waited till we had that meeting with him. Now, you're right, we can go to the next step, and we would have to wait another 30 days. But realistically, this has been taking a long time. I feel like if we get some cooperation from the city, we can get this thing done. 200 people, shut us down at any time you want if we have 201, 202, 203. But, we really need to move forward because I've got another 30,000. We had 2 inspections today from national tenants that we want to get them in. And, these things takes time, money. We've got to change a lot of things in that 90,000 square feet. Unless you would like 90,000 square feet to sit vacant on US 1 for the next year, year and a half. I appreciate your time.
I have a question for you, sir. You mentioned Sears a couple times and that they left. Didn't they have a lease?
They had a lease all the way to September of 2019.
Didn't they, I read somewhere that they offered to pay that lease during that time.
Exactly on the opposite.
Really?
We had 2 options, either for them to continue to stay, which means they just basically maintain a building, 90,000 square feet for the next year and a half, and we have no control over what they do or what they don't do. So I had to basically work out a termination deal with them to pay them so they can leave. And I'm very happy that they left.
Okay, it's just unusual that they had a lease and you
When
couldn't
you deal
enforce
with
it.
a dysfunctional company like Sears, I'm sure they're going to probably see this, but you have no choice to do what you have to do to get them out. And it's unfortunate that that's the case, so.
All right. Any questions? Yes. Yes, that's you.
Question for Mr. Broom. And part of my concern is obviously we're trying to get rid of the blight in the town, and having a building occupied is better than not having a building occupied. So, Mr. Broom, if this was new building going up, we would do a development agreement, correct? Or possibly could do a development agreement.
Sure, you could do a development agreement.
So is there anything akin to a development agreement that would resolve this kind of a problem?
A development agreement still would not allow you to violate the building code. That's the issue. We have
Okay.
a building official's interpretation of the requirements under the building code. So a development agreement primarily assures you certain rights to develop and gives some confidence to a developer through a developer's agreement that those certain rights he's obtained through that development agreement aren't going to change, and we're not going to change code, so he has some assurances going forward of how his project will be developed. That being, and there are certain variances to certain city codes that you can do with the development or agreement when you show need and you show enhancements in certain processes. However, when you're varying the terms of the building code as interpreted by the one person who's allowed to do that, the building official, and you want to appeal that, then the BAA is your one resource to do that.
Okay, understand that. And I guess part of me says, is there a possibility of doing an agreement? You're saying, no, there is not a possibility of doing an agreement between the city and Mr. Wright.
You could do an agreement, not an agreement that would allow you to violate the building code
Okay.
or fire code. I'm not sure of this project in which to apply here, but those
Okay.
codes you couldn't violate with a development agreement. If you obtained variances from certain codes, we could incorporate that into a developer's agreement.
Well, Ms. Nelson, when you go up to 550 people, of course you need more bathrooms, right? That's
Correct.
obvious. So now, we're being told to build additional bathrooms. We haven't even had the fire department to come out, take a look. So what is next after that? So it seems like it's just going and going and going, and I'm thinking, my God, 10,000 square feet, we can't get that approved. What are we going to do with 90,000 square feet? 3 different tenants. And I'll mention the name, well, I can't mention the name because we don't have a signed lease yet. But, they're going to be taking 30,000 square feet with the loading zone and so on and so forth. And these are other tenants that are going to be coming to the city. There's only so much time you can spend on just one little project versus the other one. And by the way, I've already spent nearly about 40,000 in signage, having event center signs out there, already purchased a dance floor, everything is ready and ready to go.
I understand what you're saying, and it sounds like the Board of Adjustment of Appeals is your best bet, and I hate to send you there, but it sounds like that's the best bet. Hopefully they'll get it done.
Thank you. One thing, if you built the bathrooms, you could go ahead with the project, right?
Well, I don't know what's going to come up from the fire department. This is my request. Can we have the fire department and the building department to just meet for 10 minutes? I'll pay for that fee so that we know what else is coming up next. I don't know what else is going to come up after that. I mean, it's so many surprises that it just keep coming up, and
We get surprised too sometimes, so I appreciate what you're saying.
Next question.
Yes, sir, you're next.
Yes, I just want to know, when is this meeting that they need to go to, the Adjustments and Appeals? When is that meeting?
The last Wednesday of the month. I don't know that.
Help me
Might be
out.
the 25th?
Do we ever have a meeting where it's like we need to move quickly? I mean, I'm feeling the frustration. I'm feeling frustrated
We-
myself. We
we-
want to do something with this building. They want to do something with this building. And it just seems like there needs to be an answer out there. And if there's an answer and they can give it to them, let's go tomorrow.
I don't know if, A, we can get a quorum, or B, what the advertising requirements are. So I can't answer that question. But these all have to be advertised meetings, and we have to make sure that we have the people we need. Frequently, people have lives outside of the boards and commissions, and so we can't always get a quorum except their regular evening. So I don't know the answer to that.
Can you check on that? though?
We can. I think the code says that if you're having a special meeting, there's an extra cost.
I think we got to do what we got to do. I really do. I think it's one thing to have to jump through hoops. It's another thing to have to wait for the hoops to get to you.
I would just make one comment. There's a process, and the process is that a design professional review the codes, the architect, the engineers review the codes, and then they bring a plan to the city to review. What sometimes people ask is for the city to give them, to tell them what's permitted, but that is not that puts the liability on the city, and they're there to hire their design professional to do that. So sometimes people are very frustrated when the city won't act as their design professional or contractor. But now we're not in the business of designing, we're in the business of permitting. And so when someone says, will you tell me what's possible, the answer is, you need to hire a design professional to do that. And once we have many pre-application conferences, we have pre-application conferences, and we have done this several times to say, these are the issues, these are the codes. When we had our meeting with the mayor, we had the design professionals talk to the building official and give them a lot of ideas, but we need a plan to review.
Well, and clearly, where I'm getting at is no matter how much frustration is going on all sides here, they have to go before the board. And I'm just saying that if we can't do anything up here, and there's no vote coming from here because we don't get to do that, then I would hope that we can make that meeting as quickly as possible. That's all I'm saying.
And she's going to attempt to look at that, so that's a good idea.
Mr. Johnson, just one last thing I want to say, and that is, I feel like we're only
Make
asking
it
for...
brief, if you will, sir, because we're really running late at this
Okay,
point.
just very quick.
Go ahead.
I feel like that we're asking for 200 people. We've been told by the city, you got to go to 550, and because you're going to have to go to 550, you have to provide more bathrooms. you know, it's almost like I'm asking for a medium rare steak, and I'm being told, then you got to have well-done steak, and that's what is required. Well, I don't want to be told that. I mean, less people is going to require less bathrooms, and we have contracts. And again, I reiterate what I said earlier, put us under watch. If we have one person more, shut us down. I have no problem with that. I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. You can, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. And I had, so this was, I might offer a suggestion, and again, it's a burden. As an independent business owner, it is a burden, but something that I have seen successful over the past few years. One is that whatever you choose to do is that's your right to do, you know, as long as it follows the rules, that's your right to do as a businessman and so forth and so on. What I have found successful in the past, and the reason I'm putting this out there is because if I look at the CRA as an example, and I go leasable square footage, and I calculate every building in the CRA, it's still less than Sears Town Mall, right? And I know how much time we spent on that. And I look at Titus Landing, and I look at how much time we invested into looking at how that development process went. So when I look at leasable square footage on access to a major thoroughfare, I would argue that even as a private entity, the well-being of that entity is of concern to the city. Therefore, my suggestion would be this. Under our strategic goals for this upcoming year and for the past few years, economic development has been one, and then quality of life has been one. So when I see, it doesn't matter who owns it, as far as the property, I think that the well-being of that property falls within those two goals, thus making it worth city at least knowing what's going on. And what I found very helpful is whatever the plan may be, whatever it might be, I've seen it done in a PowerPoint form before, and I can't speak for other council members, but what I can speak is for my own self, is that if we have the opportunity to just maybe sit down, and we've done it at City Hall, and just see what it is that you're envisioning, because there may be things that we may be able to gain from that as far as insight of how do our policies currently impact that vision, vice versa. And I found that very helpful. So I would welcome that, but that would be independent to each council member.
Actually, we have had several of those meetings, and we have come to this impasse because it's state law.
But I have.
Okay. The other thing is, I have to correct you, that's not economic development, that's redevelopment.
Sure.
There's a difference, and as you know, I did economic development for 8 years, so that's when you bring money in from the outside. Shopping centers recirculate money.
Thanks.
Yes. The conclusion that I come to is that you have to proceed and look at going to BAA and get whatever you need to do that. I'm sure Ms. Busaka will help you all she can.
I'll be happy to pay the extra fees if we can do this expedited.
Thank you, sir. Next